Hello guys and gals and welcome. So today we're going to be talking about one of the new systems that was added in Season 4. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to be coming back for the expansion. They probably have no clue what these systems are, and so I'm going to do a couple videos here going over some of these things. The first one that we're going to be going over is the tempering system, and the tempering system is available at the blacksmith from basically level 1. There is absolutely no reason why you should not be tempering your equipment. It is a massive amount of power that you will be losing out on if you do not. Now, what is the tempering system exactly? Well, the tempering system kind of represents a fix to a big problem that existed within Diablo 4, and also exists in other games too, like Last Epoch and well, a lot of games, is that basically when you're finding equipment, when you're running along and a piece of equipment drops on the ground, a lot of the times you pick up that piece of equipment and it will have a stat on it that is just something that doesn't really appeal to most people in a lot of ways. Did I have not claimed all my rewards? These are all the previous season rewards. It looks like I've claimed all my rewards. Unless I forgot to claim some of them. Looks like I got them all. I don't know why it gave me that message. Well, let that be your reminder to make sure you claim all your season rewards from last season. So when you're picking up items, a lot of the times you'll come across very odd effects. Like, for instance, you would come across, pieces of equipment that had tempering recipes, or effects on them, like fire damage over time bonuses, or pyromancy attack speed, or, things like, like lightning shock critical strike chance. And while teleport damage might seem really interesting if you're a teleport sorceress, the problem became that the majority of the player base wasn't interested in teleport damage, or the majority of the player base wasn't interested in those very specific effects of, like damage on Tuesdays, like when you have, like a character who is utilizing a very specific skill, like for instance, like if you are 200% enhanced damage while you're casting a blizzard, but also you have to be wearing socks that are blue, and like the effects were just too specific, and so the majority of the time you would find a piece of equipment, you would be like, well, that effect is useless to me. Well, the tempering system basically endeavors to take all of these damage on Tuesdays type effects that people are actually interested in, but only for specific builds, and put them into the tempering system. So taking them off the actual item when you find them. This means that for the most part, when you're looking at the drops are actually going to be mostly useful because the stats on them are going to be more generically useful to all characters. So when you find a piece of equipment that has very good stats on it, it can then be customized to give you the specific effects that you're looking. And that's essentially how the tempering system works. So if I want to take an item, like for instance, if I take this sword here, the sword can be put into the tempering window, and I can choose between two categories. Now, each category has specific items and weapons that are useful for it. If you look up here at the top, you'll see that the offensive category is capable of amulets, weapons, gloves, and rings, whereas the defensive category is only capable of shields, helmets, armor, pants, and amulets. The mobility category is only capable of amulets and boots, and so forth and so on. Now, you can put two tempers on any item. There are some like really low-level pieces of equipment that sometimes only allow you to put one temper, and that's just because they're inferior pieces of equipment. You can also put tempers on rare pieces of equipment as well, so keep that in mind. Once you put two tempers on an item, you can then masterwork it, which is a whole thing. So masterworking is a whole nother category, but you cannot masterwork the item until you have at least two tempers on the item. Now, there are a lot of different categories for tempers. The weapon temper tends to be one of the most powerful in terms of damage output because it offers things like chance for projectiles to cast twice, which is literally just double damage. So if you're doing, say, Fireball, for instance, and you see it says chance for Fireball projectiles to cast twice, so you basically have the ability for your Fireball to just simply shoot two times, essentially giving you two times the damage, as if I had two chinchillas in my hands right now. Two times the mayhem. And that is obviously very, very powerful. A lot of these are getting an overhaul in the next expansion, so in Season 6. A lot of these are changing to things like, for instance, let me give you an example. So Incinerate Size is changing to Incinerate Chance to deal double damage. meteor size is changing to a meteor, a chance to deal double damage, and so forth and so on. They want to make sure that all of the weapon tempers are multiplicative in a way, giving you additional damage through those tempers, and that's why the weapon tempers are extremely powerful for your character. And then the offensive ones tend to be more additive bonuses, like, for instance, giving you 55% cold damage. However, the more specific that you get in a category, the more damage you get. You notice that the blizzard damage is 95% because it's to a specific skill and not just to a like a broad category. And this is kind of how the game works in general, is that each one of these is going to give you a lot more depending on how specific you're making the damage bonus. Like, you can see that Lightning Spear is 125% bonus, whereas I can only get 55% to all lightning skills in general. So you get more of an additive bonus through that. And you can also utilize this to enhance your character in various ways. Like, for instance, if you scale damage based on vulnerable, you can, of course, add vulnerable damage to your items to help scale that damage output. Which is very, very effective. Now, where do you get these, though? So each one of these categories represents a tempering manual. Tempering manuals fall from monsters in the HellTide. They fall from bosses. They fall from all sorts of different monsters throughout the game, and they come in 3 different qualities. There is a magic quality, there is a rare quality, and there is a legendary quality tempering manual, and legendary being the highest, which is going to give you the best effects. And basically, when you find a tempering manual, you want to use it immediately. They do not run out. They are not single use or anything. Once you right click on the tempering manual, you will learn the temper manual, and it will go into your list of tempers that you can potentially put on items, and that's it. So don't hold on to the temper manuals. Don't stick them in your stash or something and look at them because they're pretty and wonder what they're used for. Right click on them immediately and add them to your list of available tempers. One thing that I've seen a lot from new players is that new players don't understand what the tempering system is or how powerful it is, and they don't temper their equipments. And because they don't temper their equipment, they are missing out on a large amount of power for their character, which is rather unfortunate. If you do not use tempers in the new system of Diablo 4, you are missing out on things like being able to attack twice. You're missing out on resource bonuses that can allow your cooldowns to reset faster or to give you like less resource cost or giving you more resource generation. And there are tons and tons of ways that you can hyper customize your character to beef up specific things that you would want on your character to make your character more powerful. And so if you're not using the tempering recipes, if you're not getting in here and actually building your character with the tempering system, you're missing out entirely. The expansion is going to change a lot of the tempering recipes, and one of the main issues with the tempering recipes was that it was very difficult to get specific bonuses because a lot of the tempering manuals had like 4 or 5 or sometimes even 6 options. And so one of the things that they're doing is they're narrowing down a lot of the tempering manuals to be like 3 to 4 options at most, so that it's much easier to randomly get the tempering that you're looking for, because it does in fact roll between all of the potential rolls on the tempering manual, which is unfortunate.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
So as an example, let's take this weapon right here, which currently has 6 tempers. If you look at the bottom underneath the durability, it tells you how many tempers it has. And for every greater affix on the item, it gets 1 additional temper. So 5 is the bare minimum if it has no greater affixes at all. You see with the Ring of Overwhelming Currents, it currently only has 5. Now what happens to an item when you run out of tempers? Well, it is bricked, and it will say this item has reached its temper roll limits, and you can see clearly down at the bottom it says 0 out of 5. Now, bricking an item in the past meant that the item was no longer useful and would basically just be thrown away. However, in recent Campfire Chat, they have announced that this item will come into existence, known as the Scroll of Tempering, and I have a picture of it right here. That's our Scroll of Restoration. It's this right here. Using it to restore all temper charges on an item. So if you get your hands on a rare consumable known as the Scroll of Restoration, you can reset the total temper limit on your item. Now, when you're tempering an item, you only have a chance to obtain what you're trying to get. Like, for instance, let's say I want Firebolt projectiles cast twice, and there is currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options in the Pyromancy Augments. I click on this, and I hit temper, and that is going to chance me to, well, I got meteor size, so that's not what I wanted. Also, keep in mind that when you do this, the item will become bound to you. So if you would like to trade the item or give it to a friend, make sure that you do not temper it because it will bind the item to your account. Now, in this particular case, I'm trying to get Firebolt enchantment, right? So I'm going to keep rolling the item over and over again, burning those tempers until I can get what I'm looking for. And we've got Fireball, projectiles cast twice, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for Firebolts. So I got Incinerate size, and now I've gotten Fireball again, which isn't what I wanted. And Meteor size again. And you can see how sometimes this can be frustrating because you can not get what you're looking for multiple times in a row. Now, once you reach the temper limit, there is, however, one more temper because you have a total number of tempers of 6, but the item has to have 2 tempers. So if you burn all of the tempers, and you are capable of getting at least one more temper from a second category before the item completely fails. So in this particular case, I have bricked the item because I was unable to obtain the Firebolt projectiles cast twice for myself, which is what I wanted. Now, in the future, it's going to be a lot easier because that category will not have 5 things in it. It's only going to have 3 to 4, which is going to be a lot easier than 5 random objects. But there is a kind of an issue with the system where sometimes it seems to roll the same thing multiple times over and over again, which a lot of people have pointed out, which is why I think eventually the Scroll of Restoration has come along to reset the temper limits so that people can get their bricked items back. Now, once you have the item with 2 tempers on it, you can masterwork it, and I'm going to go over masterworking in a separate video because it's kind of like a whole different topic. But masterworking is a very powerful system too, which does require you to temper your item first. Now, you can temper pretty much everything except for uniques. You cannot temper uniques, and you cannot temper mythic uniques. But you can temper any legendary or rare piece of equipment that you have. And there's a lot of very handy things to temper on your character. Like, for instance, when you play Season 6, you're going to notice that the penalties for resistances and the penalties for armor are very severe. As an example, the penalty for World Tier 4 is negative 1,000 armor, and the maximum cap is 1,000, which means that you need a total of 2,000 armor to hit the cap. And the negative resistances are negative 100% resists, which means that you're probably going to need 175 to hit the cap. And this means that you're going to be in a situation where you're constantly running out of armor and running out of resistances. Well, in the defensive category, one of the easiest things you can do is grab the natural resistance, which is going to give you a huge bonus to a single resistance, which you can roll on your equipments and try and get all of your resistances capped out. There is also things like the total armor value, which is going to be helpful for characters who are trying to get their armor capped, and even dodge chance and maximum life, which can help with your tankiness. Overall, the tempering system is essentially a system that allows you to hyper customize your character to very specific things that your character needs. Think about it like when you buy a car. The first time you buy a car, you get, a rather generic setup. Then you can go into the car. You can put your own, like a steering wheel cover on there. You can add your own little rear view mirror doodad hanging from the thing, like a little Game Boy keychain or something. You can get yourself some things to put inside the center console, and you can put some decals on the outside, and so forth and so on, right? Basically how the tempering system works is you're essentially finding a generic piece of equipment, which you can then customize to your heart's content for your character and what you're trying to achieve, which is what you should always be doing. It's basically free, by the way. Like, there's pretty much no cost to tempering low-level items within the game. Now, when you're tempering higher-level pieces of equipment, like ancestral pieces of equipment, yes, the ancestral pieces of equipment do have a cost here. You can see 12 on the rawhide, 7 on the veiled crystals, and 2 on the coiling wards. But when it comes to like lower pieces of equipment, there's essentially almost no cost for tempering items. And you would be a fool not to take advantage of the tempering system to, make your character stronger. With the especially weapon tempers. Weapon tempers are one of the most powerful tempers within the game, and not taking advantage of these is going to severely hurt your character. We've come across many people who just were having a lot of issues clearing content within the game, and one of the things that we noticed right away was that they just weren't using the tempering system. We even had people who had the manuals who were not using the manuals and were saving them because they thought the manuals were used for something else later. Do not save the manuals. Use the manuals immediately. And make sure that you are tempering every single piece of equipment as you level up. Now, sometimes when you're leveling up really fast, it might not necessarily be something that you need to, go back to town and temper every single time. But a lot of the times I still at least do like my weapon tempers, because the weapon tempers are that important. Like having the ability to cast your chain lightning twice or having the ability to cast your frozen orb twice is extremely powerful to your character, and you definitely don't want to let it pass you by. And this is just one of the new systems that was added into the game over the past, patches. So if you are coming back from like a much older version of the game, hopefully this helps you understand the tempering system and why the tempering system is so important. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them down in the comments. I will try to reply. I usually reply. And the next video that we're going to be going over is the Masterworking system, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these videos, even when we're just talking about simple systems like the tempering system leading into Vessel of Hatred. And speaking of which, 3 days, 11 hours, 46 minutes, and 52 seconds to go.